What's going on?
Well, what's going on is we have a horrible election going on. Louisiana is familiar with horrible elections. We've had a few in the past there. And we have the result of Mitch McConnell and his minions interfering horrendously in Alabama's election, trying to sort of dictate an outcome, and of course causing the exact opposite of the outcome that they wanted, because they are tone deaf and basically incompetent. And so what we are left with is pretty much the worst of all possible nominees, and he already was the worst of all possible nominees even before these sexual allegations came out. And then, so now we've got a guy who has been at least credibly accused of being a child sex abuser as the nominee of the Republican Party. And his opponent, while apparently a pretty decent man in person, is also just about as far left as you can possibly be, much more like a Northern Democrat than like an Alabama traditional Democrat. And so a lot of people in Alabama are really stuck.
When I think about what's going on in Alabama, and you mentioned it, actually, I think of the David Duke elections, and which, of course, you're quite familiar with. And I think about how George Bush came out, and I think not District 81 election, but the elections after that, and he certainly took positions against David Duke. That's not what happened here.
Well,
in terms of
I'm sorry,
Roy
what?
Moore.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we do have an incumbent president who has now wholeheartedly endorsed Roy Moore, and the Republican National Committee is back on board with him. And look, I don't want to prejudge a guy. Maybe the worst of the allegations against him are somehow wrong or exaggerated. But if a guy has been credibly, it doesn't mean it's the truth, but it means it is highly believable. If somebody has been credibly accused of some sort of sexual abuse against a child, then that person should never be endorsed by the President of the United States or by the National Party Committee, unless and until it is clear that the accusations are wrong. I'm not saying any accusation should carry weight, but if it's credible, and these are, then it is the height of irresponsibility for this president and that national committee to come in and endorse him and to send their donors money to him. And I am disgusted.
So you're disgusted by the Republicans now supporting
Yeah. The Republican National Committee has just completely compromised itself. My father was at one point on the Republican National Committee. He is not spinning in his grave; he's vomiting in his grave. This is absolutely despicable and disgusting, and the Republican National Committee should be disbanded. And you can please post that all over the place. The Republican National Committee ought to be disbanded.
Okay, so playing devil's advocate, there's the argument that the allegations are not credible. And
No. Let me interrupt you right there. They may not be. It may turn out that some of the worst are not true. It is impossible to say with a straight face that they are not at least quite credible. They are the two main Washington Post stories. I'm not talking about the Gloria Allred client.
Right.
Throw that aside. The two main Washington Post stories, actually three main Washington Post stories now, are among the best sourced, most tightly reported stories of this sort I have ever seen in my entire life.
Really?
They have multiple. They have more than 30 sources. They have something like 15 named sources. They have court documents. They have all sorts of things that make these stories believable, credible by any objective standpoint. If this were before a jury trial, the jury would say these are serious and they're definitely worthy of very close analysis, because on the surface, and even the first and second look below the surface, they look as real as any testimony will get. I'm not saying that they're true. I'm not saying that we know they're true.
Yeah.
I'm saying by all objective standards, they are credible.
What is the most compelling piece of, say, evidence in, let's say, the very first story that you would say, yeah, this makes it credible?
Well, it depends on which of the allegations you're talking about. The single most credible, the single most credible part of it all, in fact, it is now not just credible, but almost irrefutable, is that Roy Moore had a thing for, at least for older teens. There is no way with a straight face now to say that Roy Moore was not attracted to, did not try to date, did not try to, hang out with, put the moves on older teenagers. And he did it repeatedly, and he basically admitted as much to Sean Hannity. And so you have the predicate right there that he at least was interested in girls of about that age, because you have so many different people saying that he was known to hang out at the malls. You have so many people whose stories at the mall completely support each other. You have mothers saying, in fact, several mothers saying that, yes, he either took out my daughter or he asked permission to take out my daughter, including a mother who said he specifically asked when my daughter was 16 years old. And I said, she's 16. Don't you think that's robbing the cradle? No, she can't go out with you. So, so either you have dozens and dozens of people lying, or else he at least had those proclivities. Now, set that aside. Does that mean that he did exactly with the 14-year-old what was alleged? That is not proven. And if it is, it would be disqualifying. But there are parts of the story with the 14-year-old that don't quite match his MO, his usual way of acting. But the 14-year-old story also has a lot of backup as well, contemporaneous friends that she told, et cetera, et cetera.
Including her mother.
Including her mother. So set aside the 14-year-old, which is credible. You asked what is the most credible. It's not just credible, but irrefutable that he hung out at the malls and at other places and asked out older teenagers for dates.
Okay, so there's also the argument that, look, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, the bottom line is that we can't have a liberal Democrat. And, I don't really care what the allegations are. We cannot have a liberal Democrat. And I think that's what Donald Trump's position is. And in a lot of Roy Moore supporters' positions. Am I correct?
Yeah, but I want to know how many people making that argument were willing to make the same argument in reverse for Bill Clinton. Almost every single one of the prominent people, not counting Trump, because Trump wasn't even a Republican at the time, but almost every one of the other, these prominent moral, religious leaders, whatever, they were saying that what Bill Clinton did with a 23-year-old, by the way, not with a 14-year-old, but what Bill Clinton did was absolutely disqualifying in and of itself for anybody holding public office, much less the President of the United States. And they said that moral abomination, they called it, meant that he should never be anywhere in office. Now, if they say that, they cannot turn around and say that Roy Moore's allegedly worse abomination can be overlooked because, well, he's a Republican and the other guy's not. That is the height of hypocrisy, and those people should go hang their heads in shame. They are despicable and disgusting. I'm on fire here. I'm just furious, and I'm not even sure that I believe the whole story of the 14-year-old. I'm just saying that if the allegations are credible, then people should be staying away from the people in high authority. Should be staying away while these stories are still being vetted. They should not jump in and support somebody who is credibly accused of these things unless and until we know that these allegations are bunk.